company saying that they're customer obsessed is misunderstood or misrepresented. Because it's not about the customer always being right. And it's not about doing everything that the customer asks you to do either, right? It's about truly understanding those outcomes that they're trying to achieve, and aligning your business, your products, your services, your teams around helping them to succeed. And that means that you have to go deeper and understand what their goals are, really uncover their why. Why did they purchase your product? Why did they decide to engage with you? And then taking that information and
Hello, and welcome to the CX Files podcast. Today's guest is Erin Lindheim. Erin, thanks for joining.
nice to be here, Ben.
So, can you tell us the story of why you got into tech and how has that evolved over time in your career?
It's an interesting story and it goes way back. It was my first job, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And it just so happened this is when information technology was really taking off. So before it used to be very much underneath like the finance department, but people were getting PCs, moving off of mainframes, and I fell into a role. Working in an IT department. I'm going to totally date myself. I was punching down phones, putting wise terminals on people's desks, but I really did find a passion for it. And I really liked helping people, right? And the technology was the way that I did that. It was kind of the way that I was able to help people achieve their goals. And I was actually good at it. I wasn't too into the technology piece of it per se, but it was a means to an end. Um, I just so also happened to get into it at a really good time. It was when the dot-com boom was taking off, and I shifted over into that part of tech. And I stayed there for many years through the dot-com bust, which was not fun to live through, but survived. And our company survived, and it was acquired by Microsoft. And I decided to stay on. And I actually worked at Microsoft for over 7 years and had a wonderful experience. I was also able to be opened up to a lot more experiences, one of those being interacting with customers. So I interacted with customers. My role was to tell them in a consultative manner the good, bad, and the ugly of how we implemented Microsoft technology within Microsoft. And I really found a passion around those customer interactions. So when I decided that I kind of wanted to make a switch, I thought about what brought me energy. What did I really gravitate within my current role? And customer success was starting to really take off at that time. And that was the direction I pointed myself. I went to Zendesk. I became a customer success executive, supporting some of their largest customers at the time on how they implemented their own CX strategy. And I found a really like I just was very passionate about it. I felt this is, serving customers, it's serving me. I did end up missing the startup life. And I did decide to go back to startups. And from there, I moved into customer success leadership roles. But again, just kind of, it's been a fun journey to watch customer success evolve over these past years from, just a department that cared about CSAT and NPS to really stepping into that role of owning the post-sales journey for our customers. And I feel so blessed, that I've been able to make a career at this point of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting how you're saying this. There was a kind of a serendipity, and then
Mhm.
it wasn't your original goal, but you found this and then it sort of found you. Um, and there's it sounds like you got a real satisfaction from helping people. I think that's kind of something that universally feels good, but um, it definitely pulls or draws in certain personalities,
Mhm.
um, and it makes that work experience much more meaningful when you can directly interact with somebody and help them. Um, and you've worked in a range of different companies, from big to small and back again, a couple of times. Is there some um, continuous thread between companies of those sizes where you felt like there was something specific about that interaction that really stood out to you? Or if you could share any examples.
Yeah, I big, small, in between. I think that the thread really is around the people. And those are people that you work with, that
Hmm.
are part of your team, part of the company that you're working in unison with to deliver for customers. And honestly, also the customers are people as well, right? And being able to, I don't think it's just about helping them. Helping them is, I talk about helping them. I think I get a lot of satisfaction through impact and seeing impact, right? And when you can see your customers succeed or your company succeed because you're serving your customers well, you truly are able to connect your impact to the mission. And
Hmm.
that thread goes through all of those different company sizes and experiences. I will be honest, it's a little harder. Microsoft to see your impact with the, I think I don't even know what they're up to now. They're at 120,000 when I was there. Um, but you can, right? You see it on a smaller scale, but I do think that's what
Hmm.
it is. It really is about impact and the satisfaction and the pride that you get from that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think from the earliest age, um, there's a satisfaction in seeing the result of your actions, right? I mean, if it's a,
Mhm.
a child with I don't know, a pencil making a mark on a piece of paper, right? Seeing the result of what you've done is very satisfying. Um, and then obviously in a career in a complicated field, and with a mix of requirements, and um, maybe there's a lot of layers between most people in a company and customers, right?
Yeah.
But if you're on that front line, if you're actually interacting with customers day to day, and you can see not only the kind of the qualitative result, right? This person is now happy, whereas they were sad before, or something, or they were frustrated, and now they're moving smoothly. But you can also measure it, right?
Hmm.
And maybe that's harder at a big corporation than a smaller one, but there's something very satisfying about that.
Yeah. And
Um,
being able to see your customers, again, achieve their results. I don't know. There's just something so satisfying. And it's a relationship, right?
mhm.
And I think that that's what really draws the type of person that comes into a customer success or a support role is that they truly value that human touch, that human interaction, and they, kind of feed off of it. So,
Right. Yeah, I think from the company point of view, from the management point of view, it's often said that this company is customer obsessed. This
mhm.
this company puts the customer first, right? We care about the customer, and those can be empty words. Um, Unfortunately, I think that happens, but it can also be really true and really part of the culture of the company. Um, so how has your definition of customer obsessed sort of evolved, especially in the context of AI? Sort of what does that mean to you today?
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's really important, and I think one that deserves clarification, because as you said, I do think customer obsession or companies saying that they're customer obsessed is misunderstood or misrepresented, because it's not about the customer always being right. And it's not about doing everything that the customer asks you to do either, right? It's about truly understanding those outcomes that they're trying to achieve, and aligning your business, your products, your services, your teams, around helping them to succeed. And that means that you have to go deeper and understand what their goals are, really uncover their why. Why did they purchase your product? Why did they decide to engage with you? And then taking that information and, you know, using that to deliver that proactive and frictionless experience that they truly deserve. Um, and what does that mean? I mean, that means when you talk about AI, using tools and technology to anticipate, what are those challenges that they may face, and how do you surface resolutions or solutions to that, or the right information to get them through that at the right time? And it means designing systems, right, that are going to remove pain points for them along the customer journey. It also, I think, is about, when you think about customer obsession, is about creating that connection. And when I say connection, I think especially in the world of AI, I'm still talking about human connection. And when issues come up, and if you've been in customer success or support, they always do. It doesn't matter, right? It also creates an opportunity to actually grow trust, right? So you can lead with empathy, you lead with ownership, not just closing or solving the ticket. And that builds trust with your customers. When your customers give you feedback, whether it's positive or negative, making sure that you're closing the loop on that type of feedback, right? So you want to make sure that you're hearing them, you're valuing what they've said, and whether you're integrating it into your product or not, having the conversation about the why, so that they do feel heard, they do feel valued. And then I think it's also really important, when you talk about customer obsession, to think about your team. You can't deliver that type of experience without empowering your team to do so. And that means, if you want to be truly customer obsessed as a business or an organization, you actually have to invest in your CS and your support teams. You have to give them the tools, the knowledge, the autonomy, so that they can fully support and show up for your customers. Because in the end, what you want to do is, you want to be driving value across that entire customer journey, right? You want to make sure that you're not just bringing value during onboarding, or you're not just showing up when it's time for a renewal. You want to make sure that you're thinking about customer obsession as a long game. You want to be continuously tweaking and aligning your strategy to their evolving needs. Uh, and your goal should be to deliver the desired outcomes that they need and they want and they've come to you for. And also, you don't just want to create satisfied users, you actually want to create brand advocates. And that only truly is going to come through delivering on customer obsession and delivering, on those outcomes that they've come to you for.
Absolutely. I think the leader out there that claims to be customer obsessed, but then simultaneously does not properly invest in the actual folks that talk to the customer, i.e., the customer success or support people. Though clearly that leader is missing the game. They're missing the core of what it is that they're actually trying to do and how to get it done. I think you touched on quite a few really good points there. One of the things I'm picking up on is definitely there needs to be a systemic approach. So it has, in order, if you're going to be proactive, um, if you're going to be sustained in your engagement with customers, it has to be systemic. So it can't be, excuse me, it can't be one off. It can't be reactive. It has to be, starting from analysis, looking at that customer journey, understanding where the likely hangups are going to be, and then preempting those, right? Reaching out proactively. Um, and then also, of course, giving those people who are going to be doing that action, giving them the resources, giving them the support, building the culture around that. So kind of system and culture, I think, are two big pieces here. And within that, there's a lot of detail, but um, I think if people can hit on the right system, the right processes, the right culture, and the right kind of cultural priorities, then that's the kind of direction to achieving uh, the the result or the impact of customer obsession that everybody's looking for. Would you agree?
I would agree. And that is the best way to ensure that your company is successful, and that you're growing, and that you're not only growing, but retaining your customers as well.
Absolutely. So you touched on AI. We're
Hmm.
talking about this customer journey, um, and how you need a systemic approach to getting people from step to step in that journey, getting customers through that smoothly. Um, in this context where AI is now baked into everything, to varying degrees, and there's a lot of um, kind of tailwind pushing it. Um, where do you believe in a customer journey that humans still matter the most for that interaction?
It's in the human connection, it's in the relationship. I don't think at this point where AI is, it is able to create that experience for customers. Um, it still, in my experience, feels very robotic, right?
Mm,
And it tends or leans to creating frustrating experiences for customers, especially when there is not a way to get out of an AI loop, and get to a real person. I do think that both have their place, and it's exciting. It actually is really exciting to think about AI. I was talking to someone this week about this who's thinking about taking on a new CS leadership role at a startup. And one of their concerns was, well, I've never done this before. And, I was like, well, none of us have. It's completely different, right? It's changing the entire landscape. And we have to rethink. The old playbooks don't work. What does work is, again, customer obsession. And that really truly starts with understanding your customers and understanding your customer journey and building your teams, your services, your products in support of that.
absolutely. Yeah, I think the one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is that, as you said, I mean, we have to sort of throw out the playbook because AI changes
Yeah.
everything. But there's things that do not change, right?
Hmm.
As well. And this is not the first, revolutionary technology wave, obviously. This is kind of cycles that go through history. But there's some things that haven't changed for millennia, right? Um, People love stories. People love
Hmm.
to talk to other humans and have their feelings be understood, have their problems be understood. Human relationships, right? And I think one of the things that you mentioned as well is that AI often feels very robotic today. And a lot of the tools that are out there appear human like, but they're still falling in that uncanny valley. And they're definitely not building relationships. I mean, people, excuse me, getting over a cold here.
Hmm.
People cannot have a human relationship with an AI. And that is something that's never going to change. I think, and beyond, feeling good, that's good for business, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so, kind of identifying in that customer journey, okay, here's a point where AI is a good fit. Here's a point where we need a human touch. Here's a point where AI is a good fit, and so on. I think in kind of blending those, yes, the playbook has changed, but also um, this is a relationship building opportunity, and kind of knowing when those moments are and fitting them in appropriately, that's going to be the right kind of strategy, a hybrid, if you will.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Were you finished? Or, okay, I
Oh,
was
please
gonna
go ahead.
say, yeah, I was gonna say I agree. And again, going back to the customer journey and truly understanding what that is, um, to your point, AI today cannot replace human interaction, human relationship on the level that you need to be able to satisfy customers, right? And if anything, um, if you implement AI in a way that is not in support of the best experience for them, you're actually going to erode trust. And you're going to make customers feel like they're being pushed off to a machine. I know that's how I feel quite often when I go ahead and try to kick off a support ticket and it has an AI person, or I get stuck in a loop. It's going to be around augmenting, using AI to augment the experience, not replace the relationship with that customer. Um, AI is going to be really great at removing friction, surfacing insights and data, analyzing the data to show patterns that they can then either surface information for the customer at a right time for them to be able to be successful, or surfacing it to a human who can then intersect that conversation and apply empathy and EQ to the situation. Um, I think that you can think about AI like for precision, and you can think about people for that emotional part that's so key. Um,
Hmm.
I also think it's really important, and I've been happy, at least from what I've seen so far, to see most people are doing this, is to be transparent about where you're using AI, especially if it interacts with humans, right? Don't have a support person that you're pretending is a person and it's just AI in the background. It it's not there yet. It's just not.
Right.
People can sniff that out,
Right.
right? So really making sure, I think it just comes back to trust. You need to preserve trust with your customers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's little signals that customers
Hmm.
get about a company's priorities.
Yeah.
And if if the signal that they get erodes trust, if they get a signal that says, "Oh, look, they're trying to deceive me that this is an AI chatbot," um, if there's any hint or whiff of that, it it rapidly erodes trust. It's not subtle. It's not slow. It's sort of immediately and drastically erodes trust. Um, and I think there's this idea of giving people the kind of support that they want when they want it, right?
Hmm.
If a customer wants to talk to a human and you're trying to deny that to them, whether overtly or in a deceptive way,
Hmm.
um, they smell it immediately, right? I mean, in my personal experience, it's been blatantly obvious. Even the company thinks they're being sneaky, but nobody's fooling anybody,
No.
right? Um, and on the flip side, there's an opportunity here, right? Which is, saying, do you want to talk to a human? Here they are. Or maybe, it's after hours. Please try again tomorrow. Um,
Hmm.
but, having that available and also saying, oh, do you not want to talk to a human? Do you want to solve this by yourself? Oh, here's that option for you. And I think that there's kind of mixed incentives or mixed priorities here, and it's kind of gotten out of whack a little bit in some teams and some companies. And hopefully that'll get sorted out as people kind of become more familiar with how to build this hybrid experience. Um, what what would you say are some of the, if there's some specific examples of like how AI can be used to anticipate and solve problems when it makes sense?
Yeah. Again, I think going back to usage data, right? So if you understand what their desired outcomes are, and you're able to intelligently, supply that information into AI, you can use it at that point to be able to monitor, to observe, um, to be able to, as you said, share information in the moment, when they don't need somebody coming in and maybe having a conversation. They're just trying to do a task, right? Like their time is money for any business. I think that's a really good one. Another opportunity is to have AI in the background monitoring. What is sentiment, right? Like on calls, like
Mm-hmm.
AI can do that. Like, are they becoming frustrated? Like, hey, we've had multiple support calls with this customer, and I am sensing or I'm getting these cues that this is starting to go south, right? And then escalate it in to a human to be able to then come in with context and again empathy to then try to figure out how do we right the ship here. The other one is to support and augment your team. The more your team knows about your customer or the person that they're speaking to, the better connection that they can make, right? So
Mm-hmm.
AI
Mm-hmm.
tools for support reps, for agents, for customer success managers, so that they can dive deep. They can, surface that type of information, which is probably in some database, or some data set within your company or somewhere. I think that's a really good opportunity. So those are three that I would really think of where you're actually elevating the experience as opposed to restricting it.
I really like the way that you put that. Yeah, I think if people can just think about how can this elevate the experience instead of restrict it, I think that'll point them in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Um, One of the things that one of the stories in customer support, customer experience that really kind of broke out of the customer experience world and
Mhm.
reached the larger business world was the story of Zappos. And I think most everybody listening to this has heard of Zappos, but basically, it's an online shoe store. I think they were later acquired by Amazon. But when Zappos first came on the scene, I wasn't working in CX space at all. I was in a totally different world. But I heard about Zappos customer support. It became a major, buzzy news story. I would say across the kind of business world, because they had taken this approach of really empowering their frontline team to
Mhm.
do whatever it takes to delight the customer. I mean, really giving them a lot of autonomy and giving them a lot of leeway and saying, just make it right for the customer. Um, what do you think it would take for modern organizations, especially ones that are really looking at AI and in some stage of their journey of deploying AI? What would it take for them to replicate that kind of trust and autonomy?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the story of Zappos. I first heard about it when I read Daniel Pink's book, Drive, which, if people haven't read that book, I totally would recommend it. It's all about what drives humans, right? And you said one of them, it's autonomy, it's mastery, and it's purpose. And that's what Zappos truly, um, you know, like they built a culture around that, and it was a culture of supporting their teams so that their teams were then able to provide the best service for their customers. I do think, one of the things that they did really well in that was they trusted their teams to serve the customer rather than just reading a script, which is kind of where we've come now. There's lots of scripting, and if you think about AI or technology, or if you're using, that type of technology, it is going to be normally off of a script or some sort of, a flow that's been created, which can be incredibly restrictive, like we were talking about before. Um, I think that, again, if you want to replicate that in some way, um, the goal really isn't going to be to replace the human touch, but to use AI in a smart way, so that you can route tasks, you can provide information. Again, like we talked about, surfacing those types of insights, right? Saving people time at maybe those like more, low stakes engagements. But then also in the background, serving up information to your team so that they can proactively serve the customer in maybe higher stake engagements. What you do when you give your teams the tools, the knowledge, and the support to do that is you let them focus on the customers, focus their empathy, focus their creativity, focus their, trying to drive to solutions for them that really meet their needs. So I think it's going to be really important when people are thinking about how they take their CS and support teams and bring in this newer technology is like, how do you blend the efficiency, that you get from AI with the human connection in a way that really empowers your frontline teams, similar to what Zappos did, right? You can deliver that same customer obsession while also, scaling through the use of technology. And you can ensure that your customers continue to feel valued. And at the end of the day, that's so important to be able to retain and grow those customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that making customers feel valued, that's something that is nuanced, and there's
Hmm.
different ways to do that. I
Yeah.
think I shared with you before, but I have this idea that even if you are the most AI forward company, you've got it deeply integrated, you're really trying to push self service. I think that you could benefit from giving people a human intentionally the first time they come into a support
Hmm.
channel
Yeah.
anywhere in your company. And I think that this makes sense for a few reasons. It might be expensive, right? Depending on your business, it might not make sense, all the usual caveats. But I think if it makes sense for your business to have, people talking to people at any level, think about giving customers a human first in that first interaction, because the beginning of any customer relationship is going to be the most critical, right? For the long term success, right? And you think about all these things like churn and
Hmm.
NPS and all of this, right? But if they expect to get a cold, you know, calculated deflection to self service, and instead they get a nice warm greeting from a human being, well, not only are you kind of delighting them by exceeding their expectations, but you're setting the stage for a relationship with that customer that says, all those things we talked about before, right? Yes, you can trust us. Yes, we have a human touch. Yes, we are real people that care about you.
Hmm.
Um, and then maybe the next, the second, third, fourth interaction might be self-service straight to AI, but that first step, I think, is critical. Um, and if you can set up your flow through your support channels so that there's an option or just a straight to human kind of flow, then that's an opportunity that I think more teams should consider. What do you think about this idea?
I think that that is a wonderful strategy. Again, you said the word delight, right? Those little moments of delight that you can create, they add up. And you really want like a reserve of that, when sometimes things do go sideways, which we all again know that they will.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if your business model fits that and your support model fits that, right, that could be a really great opportunity. Another one that we had talked about, which is the place where some of the most friction happens, and it also sets the tone and stage for the relationship, is onboarding. So for customers who, potentially have, or companies who have customers that are buying maybe more technical software, ones that are harder to implement, more complex. That may be one that you want to make sure that you're keeping humans there, right? I would also say renewals, anything where you have the possibility of something going sideways and you really need context and you really need to be able to kind of be nimble, could be another one. Uh, Support queues is one where it's ripe. You have support call drivers, being able to look and triage those call drivers of, hey, this is one where it's much more complex, nuance. We need to have a connection. Hey, this is like, I think we talked about this before, password resets. Nobody should be doing a password reset. Uh, those are things that you can really do. But again, I think it is coming back to the customer journey and truly understanding, you know, those different moments and milestones that matter, and then going deeper and saying, hey, where do humans make the most sense, and where can we actually, use AI to drive more efficiency? And that's going to be really important. And I don't, again, this is kind of a brave new world at this point. We're the playbooks of the past aren't going to work anymore, but the essence, like, if you come down to brass tacks about what you need to do to deliver to customers, all that's still the same. That all is the same right now, and you just have to adjust, your approach and bring your technology in smart ways.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on with that. And one of the one of the things that you mentioned is flexibility.
Hmm.
And when is that it more impactful, right? Because a human has access to all the tools. Human can take a lot of actions. They can escalate. They can talk to a manager. They can talk to engineering. They can do all these different things. Where AI necessarily has to have its guardrails on, and it has to be kind of following a
Yeah,
script, and it's narrowly focused by comparison. So when is that flexibility most impactful? And like you said, one of the great examples is around renewal time, right? Where
mm,
yes, we want that agent, that human, to be empowered, maximum flexibility, maximum autonomy, do whatever it takes, keep this customer, right? Um, I think that's one example that really makes a lot of sense, and it reminds me also of um, this idea of the evolving mix of metrics that people
mm,
can and should optimize in customer success and support. And I think, this also goes to this idea of like the legacy view being it's a cost, let's reduce it, right?
yeah,
To the modern view, which is this is a revenue driver via retention.
correct. Force
Um, and
multiplier, 100%.
right, and potentially upsell and cross sell and so on. But I think that like the steps in the customer journey that impact retention, that
Hmm.
impact cross sell or upsell, those are the points where you really want to hone in on human touch, maximum autonomy, and measurement as well. Because as a leader, if you're in CS or CX and you have a team that is contributing to revenue in a measurable way, well, it just gives you a ton of leverage. It gives you a ton of influence, doesn't it?
It does. I
Ultimately, it should
mean,
help customers and the business.
it helps the business. That's how you're able to, hopefully get and retain your seat at the board meetings, right? You need to be touching, impacting, growing revenue.
Hmm.
And leaders of CS, again, it's changed so much over the years, and it's still evolving and changing, right? But I do think that most CS leaders at this point understand at least retention and growth, right? Are in their wheelhouse, and they want it because that also helps them to promote and protect and retain their teams. I think that it's really important, again, going back to empowerment of your teams. I would suggest that leaders make sure that they bring their CS and support teams into this process early. They know the customer journey the best. They're in it day in and day out with these customers, right? They are working through these problems. Bring them in. Help like have them help to understand or show you where AI may be the best, or where they think that, no, really, this gets dicey. Let's keep a human here. And that's going to evolve. AI is going to get better. I know it is. Like it's pretty, I've never seen a technology. I've been, like we said at the beginning, been in tech for over 30 years, have gone, through quite a few evolutions of tech. I've never seen something move this fast. And it's amazing to watch, but it's not there yet. So I think it also has to be an iterative process. So what you build today, in 6 months, you probably are going to need to update and change it because things are going to have changed. The technology is going to get better. You're going to have learned more. Your customers' expectations may have shifted. When I think about it, CS leaders should look at how their services, their teams, what they're creating or delivering impacts revenue, positive revenue for the company. They should bring in their teams to help to build what that looks like, and they should set a regular cadence of review, update, and kind of like refresh, so that they can keep ahead of the curve.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think you're right. Um, Rounding out the episode here today, and talking about how to deal with this changing environment, thinking about the future of where things are going, kind of medium to long term. Um, if you're working with somebody in your consulting practice, or if you're coaching somebody, what are some of the things that you would tell them to focus on for the future, or what sort of direction would you point them in?
If I wanted to, or if I was working with someone currently, especially in this state that we're in right now, and especially startups, because I work with smaller companies that are really building out their CS practice, is what is customer obsession, and making sure they clearly understand it, right? Again, as we talked about at the beginning, it doesn't mean saying yes to everything. And it means that you have to understand what truly matters to your customers. What are their goals? What are their challenges? And then aligning your teams, your product, and your services to help them to get there, right? So that's number one. How do you truly become customer obsessed in a way that it benefits your company, your business, and your customers, not just letters or words on a board. um, I would also say, AI is powerful. It is a powerful tool, but it cannot replace the human touch. And so making sure that you're using AI in those ways that are going to reduce friction, that are going to support your team to deliver better service, or are going to, resolve issues in the moment, where it makes sense, is really important. But at the end of the day, real relationships, that's people. And AI, at least at this stage, is not going to replace that, right? It can augment it, but it can't replace that. And then
Hmm.
finally, again, coming back to this, and I do think this is where, especially in kind of the landscape that we're currently in, and especially in tech, where we're seeing lots of layoffs, AI, all of these different things, um, customer obsession always is going to start with your team, right? And so don't forget about your team. Don't forget about the people on your team that you've brought in that are the front line. They need to feel empowered. They need to feel like you trust them, you value them, and you need to connect them to your mission, right? So that is so critical. If you do those things, they're going to show up in amazing ways for your customers. And ultimately, that's going to be incredibly positive for your business.
Well said. I think that's a great list, and for people who are interested in getting in touch with you and maybe working with you as a consultant or a coach,
Yeah.
Can you let people know about how they can reach you? Let them know your
Yeah.
website and maybe what types of customers you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. So my website is www.e2, the number L, consulting.com. And again, I'm interested in working with probably smaller startups. So, B are, A, seed companies that are just starting to get started with customers and kind of building from the ground up and don't know where to start. That's kind of my sweet spot. And also executive and professional coaching. So any professionals at this point who maybe are looking at a career change, looking at a way to develop and grow within their role, or just want to tackle daily challenges, they can reach me for that.
Great. Thank you, Erin. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yes.
And this has been the CX Files podcast. So tune in next time and we'll see you there.